Breaking tonight, the Saudi Defense Ministry says it has intercepted 4 drones launched toward the Shebaa oil field. This comes as Iran is maintaining its retaliatory attacks against U.S. and Israeli targets, as well as some of its Gulf neighbors. Meanwhile, the UAE is freezing Iranian assets, and more American weaponry is moving into the area. Correspondent Lucas Tomlinson is live tonight from Dubai. Good evening, Lucas.
Good evening, Brett. A third U.S. Navy aircraft carrier strike group is getting ready to cross the Atlantic and join the war against Iran. The USS George H.W. Bush has completed her workups just off the coast of Cape Hatteras and is expected to deploy soon. She's expected to head to the eastern Mediterranean after the aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford crossed the Suez Canal on Thursday and is now in the Red Sea. In addition to dozens of strike fighters aboard the carrier, the guided missile destroyers in the strike group will also be available to hit targets potentially in Yemen, should there be any signs of Houthi rebels launching attacks on Israel or international shipping. Now, in the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil flows each year, transits are now down 94% since the start of the war. As an incentive to get traffic moving again, the Trump administration announced today a $20 billion reinsurance program, and Energy Secretary Chris Wright says the U.S. Navy will begin escorting vessels through the strait when it is safe to do so.
First, we got to get their ability to cause trouble way down. And then as soon as it's reasonable to do it, we'll escort ships through the straits and get the energy moving again.
While Iranian ballistic missile strikes are down 90% and drone attacks 83%, attacks continue here against the UAE. 9 more ballistic missiles and over 100 drones launched overnight, all except 3 drones shot down. Since the start of the war on Saturday, the UAE has been attacked the most by Iran, with over 1,000 drones and missiles fired at the country. More than 90% have been successfully shot down. And officials have confirmed that the United Arab Emirates has frozen all Iranian assets here in the Gulf state. Brett.
Lucas Tomlinson, live in Dubai. Lucas, thanks. Nate Foy in Tel Aviv with the latest tonight. Good evening, Nate.
Hey, Brett, good evening. In the first week of Operation Epic Fury, U.S. forces have struck 3,000 Iranian positions, many of them ballistic missile sites. But tonight, Iran is proving they still have missiles to fire. Just about 15 minutes ago here in Tel Aviv, we heard the sirens go off for the 6th time today. We saw about a dozen interceptor missiles get fired off right over my shoulder. So the war rages on both ways. Israel remains on the offensive. The air defense remains strong, but they are inflicting punishing blows in Iran and also in Lebanon. They've hit 500 Hezbollah military sites, including several command centers. Today in Tehran, Israel destroyed an underground bunker built for and often used by Iran's former supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. A senior Israeli official tells Fox Khamenei didn't use the bunker the morning of his death because he didn't think the U.S. or Israel would kill him. We're learning more about the cluster munition that Iran fired at central Israel overnight. They're called dual-purpose improved conventional munitions, or DPICMs. They're incredibly difficult to intercept, and it takes time to clear the munitions. The U.S. gave Ukraine this same weapon back in 2023. So far, U.S. forces have hit Iranian control centers, air defense systems, and communication infrastructure. Many of those targets are in Iran's capital, where the residents of Tehran describe explosions nearly all day long. Tonight, the U.S. military base near Baghdad was hit by Iranian drones, or at least targeted by Iranian drones, as Iran has now targeted 12 countries across the region, including civilian infrastructure, as the U.S. military tonight says the targeting of innocent civilians will not go unanswered. Brett?
Nate Foy in Tel Aviv. Nate, thanks. As we told you at the top of the show, President Trump is demanding an unconditional surrender from Iran. He says the Islamic Republic's new leader must be great and acceptable, in his words. After that, the U.S. and its allies will help rebuild Iran. A few hours ago, as I mentioned, the president spoke to some of the people who are supplying the weapons the U.S. is using against Iran. Senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy reports tonight from the North Lawn.
Young people are being signed, 17-year-old quarterbacks, for $12 million, $13 million, $14 million.
Just before a college sports roundtable, the president met with defense contractors, including Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Boeing.
The purpose of it is to talk about the president's aggressive and fierce support for rapidly increasing the ability of U.S. manufacturers to produce American-made weapons, which we know are the best in the world.
Responding to reports that Russia is helping Iran target American troops, a White House spokeswoman says Operation Epic Fury is meeting or surpassing all of its goals, and the United States will continue to dominate. But alarm bells are going off about how long gas prices will remain elevated.
I think it's of order weeks. I would say in the worst case, but it's weeks, not months.
Politico reports Energy Secretary Chris Wright and other advisors focused on energy policy, including a council led by Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, are getting screamed at to find some good news on bringing down prices. Secretary Burgum has one idea.
The Venezuelan partnership is going to be one of the ways that price goes down at the pump in America.
Operation Epic Fury will continue, President Trump writes on Truth Social, until the Iranians offer their, quote, unconditional surrender.
And just a few minutes ago, we were in the East Room. The president was hosting this NCAA event, and he took a couple questions. I asked him about this report that the Russians are... and you'll excuse me, I just ran out here. I asked him about this report that the Russians are helping the Iranians target Americans. And the president, who wanted to stay on topic, said he thought that was a stupid question. Brett?
Nice job jogging to the camera. I know how that goes.
It was more of a
Live in
sprint.
the North Lawn.
Jog,
sprint.
I'd have my
Full
breath.
on.
It was a sprint.
Full-on sprint. Thank you.
So with that, we bring in Brett Velikovich, former Army Special Ops Intel analyst and drone expert, founder of Powerus and a Fox News contributor, and Brent Sadler, retired U.S. Navy captain who served for 26 years, including operational tours on nuclear-powered submarines. We've seen some incredible action by subs in this altercation so far. He is now at the Heritage Foundation Senior Research Fellow. Great to have both of you with us, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Brett Sadler, let me start with you. I want to just read this. This is a Truth Social post from President Trump that was on Tuesday. And in it, he said this: at the highest end, we have good supply, but we are not where we want to be. Much additional high-grade weaponry is stored for us in outlying countries. Sleepy Joe Biden spent all of his time and our country's money giving everything to P.T. Barnum, Zelensky, exclamation point of Ukraine, hundreds of billions of dollars worth. And while he gave so much of the super high away and free, he didn't bother to replace it. So he's talking about the high-end good supply. Brent Sadler, your take on the president's post in that regard, what he's talking about, and where you think we stand overall in terms of capability and munitions.
Well, thanks for having me on. And it's actually, the president is right. And for folks like me that have been following this for many years, the need to have a much deeper arsenal in the high-end weapons, mostly the air and missile defense, has been a long-standing problem. We need to start ordering more of these. It's also a capacity question. But for far too long, certainly under President Biden's administration, but it goes back even further, we have not bought in the numbers the weapons that we knew we would need in a major fight. And if we get into a major war that lasts months and years, that's going to test us very quickly on the depth of that arsenal. And we need to actually expand not just what we have in bunkers, but also what we have in the factory floor as well.
So, Brett Velikovich, we've seen a lot of very fascinating drone activities. Some of these one-way unmanned drones are being used for the first time. Big meeting right now at the White House. We're not sure if they have started yet or not. But what do you think is the discussion between these, our highest end defense companies and the president this afternoon? What could be done quickly if needs to be?
Well, I think the discussion is how do we plus up our counter drone defenses to, continue to strike down these drones, because clearly some of them are getting through, obviously more than we wanted to. We're seeing more drones penetrate our defenses than I think expected. We should be really honest with ourselves about that. That brings up, frankly, a larger issue that I've been talking about on this network for years. We have our critical installations around the world have been vulnerable. There are people in some of our own government offices who have failed the American people in purchasing failed equipment. That's why we're seeing some of these Shahid drones get through. Even one enemy drone getting through our defenses and striking a U.S. embassy overseas is unacceptable. And Martha, something a cheap $20,000 Shahed, forcing us to burn multi-million-dollar interceptors, starting fires currently at oil facilities and U.S. embassies. That's unsustainable math. Marco Rubio said the other day we only make 6 to 7 interceptors per month at the tune of $1 million apiece. That doesn't make sense. He probably doesn't know that there are probably parts of the government acquisition cycle that are still a mess. I mean, I don't know who's in charge of the Department of War's procurement over the last few years to put counter drone systems, but the reality is that we're seeing right now there are gaps, and so we need to buy more systems in the U.S. and start plussing up our forces. And I hope that there's a real discussion at the White House right now about doing that.
All right. We'll talk to the UN ambassador about that as well. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Great to hear from both of you today.
As the Iran conflict expands, there's reporting tonight that thousands of Iranian Kurds are preparing for a potential military operation in Iran with U.S. backing. That's the Associated Press tonight. The Kurds are among the largest stateless ethnic group in the world, with roughly 30 million living as minorities in Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and Syria. The Kurds represent about 10% of the Iranian population. They make up about 15% of the population in Iraq. The groups in Iraqi Kurdistan have a long history of working with the U.S. during both the Iraq War and the battle against ISIS. Joining us now is Bafel Talabani, president of the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, the PUK. Mr. Talabani, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Let's first start big picture and paint the picture from where you sit of what you see with this war in Iran and what you think the implications are of it as it exists now.
We saw the hostilities start surprisingly, and it seems to be a massive escalation across all fronts. Kurdistan has come under attack from several different angles. And I'm not seeing any sign of a slowdown. If anything, I'm seeing an escalation.
So the U.S. is working on taking out missile sites and drone factories and that sort of thing. But as far as groups on the ground fighting the Iranians, this reporting that thousands of Iranian Kurds are preparing for this operation, where does that stand?
There are a lot of Iranian Kurds that deserve dignity, and they deserve perhaps better treatment. But as for any actual preparation and armed Kurds inside Iran, there are elements, and there's lots of political organization. But most of the most effective fighting forces are actually outside of Iran. They're on the borders here.
You had a conversation with President Trump. What was that like?
He was very charming. He was very kind. I could feel the emotion in his voice. He said that the Kurds were great fighters. My understanding is that the protection of their people in Iraq is paramount. He's very grateful for all the years that we have served and I have spent with your special forces.
You also talked to the Iranian foreign minister.
Yes.
What is their take on things from your call? Do you believe that regime change is possible the way it's heading right now?
The foreign minister, His Excellency, expressed great disappointment, if I'm honest with you. He indicated that as far as they were concerned, the talks were going well. He implied that a technical group was supposed to sit together in the upcoming days to discuss technical matters. He indicated that this wasn't a war that they were looking forward to, but it was a war they would have to fight. It's definitely existential to them. I got the impression that they were open to some form of peaceful negotiation, which realistically is the only real solution to this issue. Regime change at the moment doesn't look on the cards from what I see. We've seen no uprisings anywhere. We've seen nothing of that. But it's early days. I expect this operation to be long and very difficult.
You think there are difficult days ahead. The president is suggesting that he would only accept unconditional surrender, in his words, to a reporter. So you don't see that right now, that this is on the cusp of happening?
I don't, sir. No, I don't see that right now. I think that the regime has been planning for this for 45 years. and you can expect a fierce resistance. The definition of regime change is important. What is the definition of regime change? And is there an off-ramp? Because some could argue that most mission parameters have been achieved. So is there an off-ramp where now perhaps we can try to resolve this diplomatically?
Yeah, I think that from the administration, at least listening to them, taking out the ballistic missile capability, making sure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, was the original objective going in.
Exactly.
The Israelis clearly are more wanting specific regime change to get a different leader in place that the U.S. and Israel can work with.
I understand that. And I think that, Mr. Baer, the conditions, I keep hearing the comparisons to 2003. I think the conditions are very different to 2003. In 2003, there was legitimate, well-known, respected opposition to Saddam among the Shiites, among the Kurds, and don't really see that in Iran now. There isn't a standard, a symbol for people to follow, and that will make it very difficult. Troops on the ground with a country the size of Western Europe, I'm not sure if that's feasible either, but there are many options, and I think the U.S. administration is wise enough to modify their position as the battle changes and as the battlefield changes.
Just to be clear, so there's no armed cross-border operation happening now from your territory in Iraq involving Iranian Kurds into Iran?
Not that I see, and you could argue that that's actually a detriment. Iranians, like everybody else, are very a nationalistic person, and I believe that if they fear that Kurds coming in from elsewhere will cause a split or a splintering of their country, this may actually unify the people and against this separatist movement. Then you have the complications of Turkey. Turkey will have legitimate concerns of this happening. You will have Turkish intervention against the Kurdish troops. At the same time, there is a problem with the Assyrians. I think it's a very complicated scenario, and perhaps Kurds being tip of the spear is not the way to go.
Yeah. Well, there are many minorities, you're right, in Iran, and it's very complex as far as how it comes together. If you were to look into a crystal ball, how do you think this ends?
I think that Kurdistan needs to be a bridge, not a battlefield. And the Kurds are uniquely positioned as being your great allies and a partner and a neighbor of Iran. I think we're uniquely positioned to play a role in de-escalation when the time is appropriate, like my late father used to play that role. But what I see now, from what I'm seeing, is a weakened Iranian system, but the institutions, though very different to ours, are institutions and they remain solid. I think that once military objectives are achieved, I dare say that it will be the time for diplomacy. And at that time, we stand ready, as always, to stand with our friends and allies to try to bring stability, peace, and prosperity to this region that truly has suffered from far too many wars and far too many conflicts.
Dealing with the drone threat from Iran, because that's what we're seeing most in some of these Gulf countries.
Yes.
Are you worried about attacks and how to defend against those drone attacks that come in swarms?
Not to sound flippant, sir, it's not our first rodeo, and we have absolutely no defense against any drones. So I think the less time spent worrying about it, the better.
Yeah, I got you. And the U.S. is attempting to deal with all of those threats together. It's very interesting to hear your perspective. If you were to say the thing you're most worried about, what is it?
The humanitarian crisis. I think the people of the Middle East have suffered enough, and I urge all sides to try to look at a less bloody way to resolve our issues. I understand that, and I genuinely believe that Mr. Trump in his heart wants peace, and I understand the theory of peace through strength. And I also think that when the day comes to acknowledge victory, there will be grace in that victory, and we may be able to have dialogue, and we may be able to resolve this issue through the only way that will make a long-lasting peace, and that's dialogue, stability, peace.
Yeah. Well, fascinating to talk to you from the region. Balfour Talabani, the head of the PUK. Thanks for the time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Huge explosions rocking Beirut as Israel and the U.S. military continue to ferociously pound terror targets across the Middle East, escalating their strikes on Iranian air defenses and missile sites. President Trump posting on Truth Social, there will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. And Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt outlining what that means.
When he, as Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Armed Forces, determines that Iran no longer poses a threat to the United States of America and the goals of Operation Epic Fury has been fully realized, then Iran will essentially be in a place of unconditional surrender, whether they say it themselves or not.
The president telling NBC News that a potential U.S. ground invasion of Iran isn't needed because, quote, it's a waste of time. They've lost everything. They've lost their Navy. They've lost everything they can lose. Meanwhile, the Democratic resistance to Epic Fury is just getting started. The country is split evenly on how they feel about the strikes, but AOC doesn't see it that way.
The vast majority of Americans are against a war with Iran. Two things can be true at the same time. We can acknowledge the brutal reality of the Iranian regime and their murdering of protesters and targeting of people, and we can also know for sure that a forever war will not resolve that issue.
And Kamala Harris taking a moment at Jesse Jackson's funeral earlier today to hit President Trump.
So let me just say, I predicted a lot about what's happening right now. I'm not into saying I told you so, but we did see it coming. But what I did not predict is that we would not have Jesse Jackson with us right now to help us get through this.
And RIP to Mr. Jackson. All right, Jesse, a number of these Democrats just weeks ago were saying, Taco, the president told these protesters he was going to help and he never did anything. But now they're angry that he's done something.
Yeah, I don't even care about these people anymore. Kamala Harris is a joke. She couldn't find the Strait of Hormuz on a map. And AOC totally discredited herself when she was in Europe the other day. They asked her about Taiwan and she froze. So forget about those people. They're not serious. The Democrat argument against the war is three things. It's illegal, not true. It's going badly, definitely not true, and it's unnecessary. And if you look at the last week, we've proved that it was necessary because every time they send a missile or a drone our way or our allies' way, we have to intercept it with a THAAD, a Patriot, a Hornet, or a laser. That costs blood and treasure. If we had waited for the threat to be imminent, 5 years, 3 years, maybe in Gavin Newsom's next presidential term, the Iranians would build up such a massive stockpile of drones and missiles, it would have created a shield around their nuclear program, and any operation like this would have been unthinkably bloody and catastrophic and may not have worked. And it may have prevented, let's just go with the argument, President Gavin Newsom from even doing this. And then on his watch, we would have had a nuclear Iran who would have been able to blackmail the entire world. I didn't even know this, but 1/3 of the world's population is within range of Iranian missiles. If we had waited, it would have been more. I'm talking from Paris to Calcutta. We did the entire world a favor. This war was the last realistic opportunity to take this regime out, and it's going incredibly well. The drone carrier was just taken out. We have growlers jamming their electronics. We actually have attack helicopters flying over the capital of the country. Think about that. 6 days ago, we were firing missiles from the Mediterranean, and now we have manned attack helicopters right across their capital, leveling their command and control posts, and they can't do a thing about it because they're blind. The pace of U.S. operations is doubling over the last 48 hours, and the pace of the Iranian offensive effectiveness has just dropped. It's plummeting. The Israelis, they just lowered their threat level. They can come out of their bunkers now. Flights are coming out of Tel Aviv now. Their strategy is to cower and wait until we don't have the stomach for this and to inflict enough pain on our Arab allies hit an oil refinery or a tanker, so it raises the cost of the war. Pete Hegseth said it best. We have the will and the commitment and the munitions to see this thing through. And the President of the United States does not seem bothered by the timeline. Right now, you're already seeing desertions among the police, the IRGC, and among regime elements. If that continues to go and you see this ethnic fracturing around the perimeter of the country, remember, it's mostly Persian, but you got Kurds, you got Arabs, you got Baluchis, you got a lot of different sects. If they start to fracture and you get an armed outside group come in and draw this, whatever's left over of this regime out, it opens them up to airstrikes. I think the rest of the country needs to look at this. We are 6 days in. This is going very well. And I think the United States military is the best in the world.
Okay, I bet the panel would probably agree on that last part, if not a lot of other things that you said. Now, Kayleigh, I did notice that you were wincing every time you said governor. Gavin Newsom as President Newsom.
Yeah.
You were a little faint there. You know how important that.
Fell over.
Try to make a point.
Yep.
You know how important messaging is, especially in a moment like this. And that's what some of the critics are saying. Listen, the president has spoken about this. He's been very accessible the last few days, as he always is. But does he need to sort of land the plane on messaging here? Because he's got trouble on the far right, too. A lot of the MAGA base who were worried about this.
I think the effectiveness of this operation is landing the plane. I think the single most effective communication we've seen was the CENTCOM briefing yesterday. That was extraordinary. They should do those often. But as Jesse was talking, I was just looking up some facts and ensuring I was correct on them, and indeed I was. You had President Trump when he left office, and this is something I'm going to talk to Vice President Mike Pence about tomorrow, a status quo in the Middle East that was rapidly going in a positive direction. You had Middle East peace accords. The first time in 25 years, I was sitting there on the South Lawn when Bahrain and the UAE said, we are going to normalize relations with Israel. 2 other countries came on board. I was told by people in the administration, if they would have been given a little more time, Saudi Arabia would have normalized relations. Not only that, I was looking this up and confirming the last 11 months of the Trump presidency, you had not a single U.S. service member pass away in Iraq during active duty. That's an extraordinary accomplishment, and it didn't come just on its own. It came because President Trump got on the phone with the leader of the Taliban and said, if you harm the hair on the head of an American service member, you will have hell to pay. And it paid dividends. And then you had Biden come in, and you had Abbey Gate, and you had all of these U.S. service members die at the Abbey Gate, the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. You had immediate resuming of talks with Iran. The posture changed, and Iran grew, and October 7th happened. This was the time to strike. If not now, when? Allow these maniacs to get nuclear weapons? I mean, just today, you want another data point as to how crazy these religious fanatics were? Look at Trey Ying's reporting that Khamenei chose not to go down into the bunker last Saturday because he was confident that nobody would have the guts to strike him. Well, maybe you remember Biden. You don't remember President Trump because he struck you and the Ayatollah was killed immediately. Imagine if this wouldn't have happened. Imagine, God forbid, there's a Gavin Newsom presidency and the damage that would be done to U.S. service members abroad. You sometimes need to show your strength. President Trump has done that. Iran will never have nuclear weapons, and that will be the legacy of President Trump.
Well, Jessica, to the points that both of them have made so far, Jesse and Kayleigh, this issue about imminence and the fact that proxies were, fully funded, carrying out all kinds of terrible attacks, those kinds of things. We know that there were active assassination attempts that Iran hoped to carry out on President Trump. Where for you does the line come when it's imminent, not imminent?
Well, the right would have you believe that it's been an imminent threat for 47 years, even though we were sending birthday cakes all around. And Jesse says in 5 or 10 years, it could have gotten really bad. That would have given us a little more time to think this through. And you guys basically listening to you should just wave that mission accomplished banner and go back to that kind of era, because you're talking as if that this is a done deal, that we are so overwhelming them that nothing can go wrong, when the facts on the ground are that things are going wrong. Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Reuters, NBC confirming that it was U.S. airstrikes that were responsible for hitting that Iranian school. Over 150 people dead, dozens of children. You talk about our new allies in the region, and I have given President Trump his flowers multiple times about the Abraham Accords, but the FT reporting that our partners like the Saudis, the Emiratis, Kuwaitis, Saudis, Qataris are talking about withdrawing from contracts with us and suspending their investments. Oil prices surging. You love to talk about gas prices up to $86 a barrel. The Qataris say we could get you to $150 a barrel. Gas up 35 cents in a lot of conservative states. So that's not good for the midterms. And the Trump administration didn't refill the strategic petroleum reserves. You can say, oh, Biden depleted it. You still had over a year to fill it up. And you shouldn't go to war in the Middle East when you don't have enough oil. And now that Russia is providing the Iranians with information on where to strike American forces, so we didn't give the Ukrainians the Tomahawk missiles they asked for to take out the drone factories, the $20,000 drones that we spend $4 million on a missile per to take out. And now the Russians are helping the Iranians, and Bloomberg's reporting that we're going to ease sanctions, oil sanctions on the Kremlin.
Are you saying this operation's not going well?
I am saying that it is not.
Is that what you're saying, Jessica?
I am saying that there are problems with this operation.
No, tell the American people right now, is the American operation against the Iranian regime going well? Tell them.
I don't know how.
You don't know that this is an effective.
I don't know how you could listen to me say that we struck an Iranian school and that there are a bunch of dead kids and just say this is going great.
Jessica, he murdered 35,000 people. If someone made a mistake when they hit a school, that's bad, but that's war.
But you don't mention it. You just
operation is not going well. Don't lie about the war. Do not lie about the war, Jessica. You're lying.
I'm prepared to come out and say
you know the war is going well.
I'm willing to say that this is a done deal.
He's ready to wave the banner.
I'm excited about this.
Out?
I will get my banner out, put my beard on the line. I think by summertime, it's going to be an amazing time to be an American. It's going to be an amazing time to be all over the world because the sheriff is back. Listen, one of the things you guys argue a lot about is one of the biggest things was, you know how it's going well? Because they brought up gas prices. That was the thing. Or, we might be out of bombs. Those are the talking points. But here's the thing. When I'm anti-war also until my countrymen are sent out to war. Then I'm all for it, full regalia. Our troops are out there doing the thing. So you know what? High gas prices, no big deal. Food prices, no tech, all these things. Because you know what? In World War II, our American people who stayed home sacrificed everything to support our troops. So if the gas prices go up, and it's nice because we know why they went up now. Before, when prices went up, we'd be like, hey, Biden, why is this happening? Oh, Trump did it. President said, yeah, you're going to feel a pinch because this is what happens when you support the great American men and women who are just, if this was a boxing match, they would have stopped it. The president does not, I think Greg said this yesterday, I'm 1,000% behind him. He does not go into deals he does not know how to get out of. This is a completely different situation, and you keep bringing up things from the past. We've never seen a response from the Middle East like we have now. We're seeing Iran is done. They are done. And the longer it drags out, it's not going to be that long. The president wouldn't put us in this position. He's proved over and over and over again that he's an anti-war president. And your talking points, and just keeping it real, every time somebody quotes media as a source, I and most of the American people laugh. You guys have no credibility. So whatever polls you want, the only poll that I'm seeing right now is there's no flags poll flying in Iran right now. So good on USA. Keep doing your thing, making the world a better place.
And Kelly, you got a note.
Yes, just wanted to say quickly that I intended to say no active U.S. service member deaths in Afghanistan during the last the months of Trump's presidency. So just wanted to throw that out there.
We've seen these kind of marriages of convenience, so to speak, where Iran has provided Russia its one-way attack drones that they've then used against Ukraine. You've seen some reciprocation from the Russians. But look, I think you're going to see a real fair weather friend here. They need the relationships with the Gulf Arabs way more than they need Iran.
U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Mike Waltz, it's coming after a Washington Post story that Russia is providing intelligence to the Iranians to target U.S. forces. The president putting out a Truth Social saying there will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. After that and the selection of a great and acceptable leaders, we and many of our wonderful and very brave allies and partners will work tirelessly to bring Iran back from the brink of destruction. Let's bring in our panel, Fox News senior political analyst Juan Williams, Fox News contributor Molly Hemingway, and Matthew Continetti, scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, Wall Street Journal opinion columnist. Matthew, unconditional surrender and how the president's phrasing this operation so far.
Yeah, unconditional surrender, I think, Brett, is President Trump's way of saying he will determine when the conflict ends. He's spoken about going for victory. He said that the current choice for the successor to the Supreme Leader is unacceptable. He will be the commander-in-chief who determines when the conflict ends and what new leadership exists in Iran.
You just saw that interview with the head of the PUK. Here's the clip where I ask about that. Take a listen. The president is suggesting that he would only accept unconditional surrender, in his words, to a reporter. So you don't see that right now, that this is on the cusp of happening?
I don't, sir. No, I don't see that right now. You can expect a fierce resistance. It's early days. I expect this operation to be long.
Molly, what did you make of all that?
Well, I agree with Matt that President Trump, when he's talking about unconditional surrender, he kind of came out here, his people came out and said he just means by that he'll decide when the war is over. There have only been 2 times in human history where unconditional surrender has really worked out in a successful way, with the Axis and Allied conflict, or with Rome and Carthage. So it seems that Trump was being just letting people know how serious it is. It is also true that he has support from the Republican Party right now because they believe that he fights wars differently than George W. Bush and others. But the American people would like President Trump to focus on those things that he was elected to do, saving the American country, which they think has very limited time for that to work out.
Yeah, Juan.
Well, when you talk about unconditional surrender, I mean, that to me suggests that you're going to have boots on the ground. I just heard Molly refer to unconditional surrender. You think about Japan, Germany, even, what happened in Iraq. And, we had boots on the ground. And what we just heard from the leader of the PUK was there are not going to be Kurdish boots on the ground. That was an interesting strategic possibility to have someone else fight for the U.S., but Americans right now, we don't know how long this thing is going to go on. We don't know how many lives will be lost. We don't know who will lead Iraq. What we do know is this war is right now costing us more than $1 billion a day. I mean, to me, that's shocking. $1 billion a day. We know stocks are up. We know stocks are down. Oil prices are up. And we know the job market is weak. So this is just not a good moment, and we just hope that there is some strategic vision at play somewhere.
Matthew.
Well, Juan focused on the costs of the war. I would say those costs are acceptable when you consider the gains so far in the war. Trump and our Israeli allies have decapitated the Iranian leadership. They are destroying its war machine. The capacity of the Iranians to retaliate, we've seen on this show, has rapidly vanished. And now they're turning toward the apparatus of oppression that has kept the Iranian people suppressed. Once that apparatus is destroyed, it will be the Iranians who have the moment to take up and force a change in their country for the better.
I'll let that interview breathe a little bit. Let's do winners and losers here on the lightning round. Molly, you first. Winner, then loser.
My winner is Lou Holtz, who died this week at the age of 89. Going to his heavenly home and having this wonderful life that he had, blessing so many people. My loser is McDonald's CEO Chris Kempczewski, who had that viral video where he seemed to struggle eating some of his own fast food chain's product, and everyone's been dunking on him.
All right, Juan, winner and loser.
I think the winner this week, it's a Texas two-step for you. James Tallarico, the state rep, easily won the Democratic primary to run for U.S. Senate. It's the best hope the Democrats have had since Lloyd Benson back in the 90s. And the loser, I don't think there's any question, Representative Tony Gonzalez, also a Texan. He ends his reelection bid, after entering a runoff. He was going to have to face a runoff. He has an ethics probe. Just not a good week.
Matthew, winner and loser.
My winner is Mark Teixeira, the baseball great, won his primary to represent Texas in the House of Representatives and assures Republican dominance in the congressional baseball game for decades to come, Brett. I'm very excited. And my loser is any pitcher who faces Shohei Ohtani, who started the World Baseball Classic with a grand slam home run last night. He is going to be a threat to Team USA.
Yeah.
That's true. All right, panel, I'll make it up More time next time. Thanks.
Let's dig deeper on all this by bringing in Rob Sobani, adjunct professor at Georgetown University and author of The Pragmatic Entente, a book about the relationship between Israel and Iran. So the president is saying that he needs to have a role in whoever becomes the next leader of Iran. He said, quote, "There will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. After that, in the selection of a great and acceptable leaders, we and many of our wonderful and very brave allies and partners will work tirelessly to bring Iran back from the brink of destruction, making it economically bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. Iran will have a great future. Make Iran great again." I think he's sort of applying the Venezuela model here, where he had a say in who was going to be the next leader. He could have said to Delcy Rodriguez, "You're out, Maria Corina Machado is in," but he didn't do that.
No, he didn't, John. And I think the lesson for President Trump, which, by the way, I think if he is successful, he will go down in history as the most consequential leader, not just in America, but for the world, because he will have put the genie of Islamic fundamentalism back in the bottle, which came out of the bottle in 1979. Now, going back to the question of succession, Iran's different from Venezuela. The long history of Iran, 2,500 years, suggests that today Iranians want normalcy, they want modernity. And the person who can offer that inside the country, there are individuals that the president can potentially talk to. The former president, for example, of Iran, Khatami, who's an educated gentleman. And from the outside, Reza Pahlavi, who is Western educated and could be a very good ally of President Trump in making sure that this transition happens in a stable manner.
It looks like the next Ayatollah, the next supreme leader, is going to be his son, Mujtaba. I mean, that would be bad. And I imagine that Israel's just waiting for him to pop his head above the tree line, and he'll be taken out, too.
John, the last slogans on the streets of Tehran in Farsi were, "Mujtaba, you will die, you will never see being a leader." I think the people of Iran are past that. They want regime change that gives them back their decency, their honor, and their economy. You know, this is an opportunity, John, for President Trump to capitalize on a $5 trillion opportunity that is just waiting to be captured.
So in order for there to be regime change, first of all, you got to get rid of the theocracy, which I guess would mean decapitating the rest of the Khatami family, as you said. But then you've got to convince the IRGC to lay down their weapons. President Trump has made that offer. You have to convince the besieged militia to do the same thing and throw in with the people and the idea of change. And the president has already offered amnesty to Iranian diplomats around the world. But that's a big sea change when you consider how invested the IRGC and the besieged are in maintaining their power and their power of repression, as opposed to saying, you know what, let's get rid of these guys, let's have a new dawn in Iran.
I think, John, if Mujtaba is knocked out by the Israelis, all bets are off. Really? Because the torch will have been handed to his son, who is no longer. And I think that's when you'll see the fissures within the Basij, within the Revolutionary Guards. And I think you will see the police forces as well, slowly but surely laying down their arms. So I think the Israelis are the key in all this. They were the ones who took the brunt of what's happening on October 7th. Their citizens were murdered. And I think Prime Minister Netanyahu understands that.
I'll tell you, repression has been the coin of the realm there in Iran for so many years. And for that to change, I mean, they're going to have to look, they're going to have to see that there's no other future other than change.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think there are leaders both inside Iran and outside, John, who can make that happen.
All right, we'll see. Rob Sobani, great to catch up with you again. It's been a minute.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll be watching this together.
Yeah. Now, earlier this evening, the Pentagon said Secretary of War Pete Hegseth will visit U.S. Central Command headquarters in Tampa, Florida on Thursday for updates on Operation Epic Fury. Here now with more, former National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien is back with us. Sir, welcome back. I want your analysis. I want your analysis of the superiority of U.S. and Israeli intelligence and the military superiority, especially when you factor in that most of Iran's military technology, missile defense systems, air defense systems, their warships, that's all technology that came from Russia and China. What does that tell us?
Well, the first thing we learned from this, and Pete Hegseth is going to see this tomorrow at CENTCOM, is we're doing something unusual. We're fighting to win. Donald Trump defeated ISIS in the ISIS terrorists in his first term, and that's the Islamic State. He's going to defeat Iran, the Islamic Republic, in his second term. So we're fighting to win, and we're using American advantages of aerial bombardment, naval bombardment. We're using the edge that we have to win and to do shock and awe in a way that's never been done before. The Iranians, Sean, would like to have our soldiers and Marines patrolling in Tehran under very restrictive rules of engagement. They can't shoot at anyone. They have to be targets and then get hit by IEDs. Guess what? Donald Trump's not going to play that game. He's not going to play the Iranian game. And going to your point, our air and naval forces have been so superior. They've wiped out all these Russian and Chinese platforms in this kit. And if I was in Beijing or Moscow right now, I'd be pretty worried about the viability of their arms industry, because why would anyone want to buy their equipment when they've seen how well it worked in Venezuela and now how well it's worked in Iran? Not very.
How do you explain the superiority of the U.S. in terms of our intelligence gathering, the U.S. and Israel, and their ability to, in the first 30 seconds, to wipe out the supreme leader and, his top 40 aides? And when their Security Council gets together and they're voting for the next supreme leader, they're all wiped out next. How do you explain that?
Sean, it's astonishing and it's astounding. We have incredibly exquisite assets. We're very good on the reconnaissance from space. Our satellites can pick up better than a license plate number on an automobile. We can watch where all these guys are going. With our SIGINT, we can pick up when they're talking on the telephones. And the Israelis, with their Mossad, have infiltrated every square foot of Iran. If these guys are going to the dentist or getting their hair cut at their barber, they don't know if it's a Mossad agent who's cutting their hair or fixing their teeth. So the combination of Israel and the U.S. on the intelligence front, our technical ability and their assets, and that's not to degrade our human assets either. John Radcliffe, I'm sure, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sure he's got a lot of guys on the ground doing their work as well. So between the CIA and Mossad, don't get on the wrong side of them.
Knowing what we're witnessing here, how do you explain Biden and Obama's approach to Iran, dropping cargo planes full of cash and other currency on the tarmac so they can build out the nuclear facilities and other weaponry? How do you explain, with our military being so superior, the disastrous withdrawal of Biden out of Afghanistan?
Hey, Sean, it's inexplicable. You can't explain it other than there's just this ideology of appeasement on the Democrat side. When I first started working for Donald Trump, as you know, as his hostage envoy, we had Americans who were held hostage in Iran. And I went to negotiate with the Iranians. I said, we want them out. We're not paying anything. We're not going to give you one red cent. And they said, no, it's $1 billion a hostage. That's what Biden paid, or Obama Biden paid. And that's ultimately what Biden paid. We said, no, we're not going to give you a dime. But how about you get to wake up in the morning and not be dead? And that's Donald Trump's approach to it.
Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin, she's live in Washington with the very latest on Operation Epic Fury. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, Sandra. Admiral Brad Cooper said the number of Iranian ballistic missiles fired in the first 24 hours is down 90%. But Iran has a near limitless supply of Iranian Shahid drones, which are being targeted by cheap American $10,000 weapons, according to Brad Cooper. Separately, American Lucas one-way attack drones that have been reverse engineered by the U.S. military from Iranian Russian drones found on the battlefield in Ukraine are now hitting fixed targets in Iran.
This was an original Iranian drone design. We captured it, pulled the guts out, sent it back to America, put a little Made America on it, brought it back here, and we're shooting it at the Iranians.
The U.S. has lost at least 3 MQ-9 Reaper drones over Iran, but much more significant are the direct hits to sensitive U.S. and allied radar installations across the Gulf. Videos from the first days of the strike show a satellite communications hub in Bahrain and Qatar taking direct hits. Fox News has confirmed that Russia is quietly providing intelligence to Iran to help with the targeting. This was first reported by the Washington Post. Russia's goal to prolong the conflict and drain valuable U.S. munitions, much like the U.S. has done by providing targeting intelligence to Ukraine after Russia's invasion. At CENTCOM headquarters yesterday, Admiral Brad Cooper said the U.S. had struck an Iranian drone carrier roughly the size of a World War II aircraft carrier. It was still on fire as the press briefing began.
Our strikes against the Iranian Navy have intensified. You may have heard the president say just a little while ago that we have sunk or destroyed 24 ships. That was true at the moment. We're now up over 30 ships.
Meanwhile, satellite imagery and verified videos show the girls' elementary school hit in Minab, Iran on Saturday was likely hit by U.S. precision munitions, along with 6 buildings at the neighboring Iranian naval base. Satellite images from 2013 showed the school inside the IRGC naval base perimeter, but images from 3 years later clearly show it outside the base. 180 school children were at the school at the time of the strike. More than 130 were killed. The Pentagon is still investigating. Of note, Planet Labs, the leading provider of high-resolution satellite images to the public, has decided to place a 96-hour hold on any images taken over the Gulf states so as not to provide any easy battle damage assessments to the Iranians. Sandra?
All right, Jennifer Griffin with that update live out of Washington for us. Thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.